2024 has seen more challenges in global governance. Regional conflicts and geopolitical tensions have hindered the global economy and international cooperation. How can restoring development return to the top of the world's agenda? And how could new quality productive forces help boost economic transformation? We asked global experts focused on China's economy and its role in the world. Tune in to our special series, The World Ahead 2025.
Hello and welcome to World Insight with me, Tian Wei. Today we present to you the second episode of our special program. Over the next 30 minutes, we have guests who will talk about China's role in global governance. In 2024, world leaders gathered on various occasions, taking up challenges to international community, particularly development, regional conflicts, the food and energy crisis, the hottest years on record, trade disputes, and the slow recovery of the world economy, just to name a few. None of them can be solved by any one country alone. The world's troubles call for international cooperation.
I want to thank the American people for the extraordinary honor of being elected your 47th president and your 45th president.
Merriam-Webster's 2024 word of the year is polarization. It has been a trying year on the world scene as the forces of disarray grew stronger.
We are in an era of epic transformation, facing challenges unlike any we have ever seen. Challenges that demand global solutions.
Anti-globalization political measures such as tariffs, export controls, unilateralism, and protectionism continue to undermine the integrity and stability of global industrial supply chains. However, the rise of the Global South and China's commitment to peaceful development have given stability and hope.
China is a strong supporter of the multilateral trading system within the WTO and has continued to assure us of its support.
2024 marks the 10th anniversary of the concept of major country diplomacy with Chinese characteristics. This year, China is actively contributing Chinese wisdom and solutions at many major international multilateral occasions.
I said on many occasions that humanity is a closely entwined community with a shared future. They should see each other's development as opportunities rather than challenges, and treat each other as partners rather than rivals.
At the 31st APEC Economic Leaders Meeting, China put forward 3 propositions based on its own development experience. During the G20 summit, China announced 8 actions in support of global development. As the world navigates its current crises, China's contributions to global governance are helping to foster stability, promote sustainable development, and build a more inclusive future. The path forward requires collaboration, innovation, and sharing responsibility.
Joining us on the big screen, Zun Ahmed Khan, a research fellow from the Center for China and Globalization. Good to see you. Peter Chang, Deputy Director of the Institute of China Studies with University of Malaya. Good to see you. Meanwhile, on the stage, joining us, we have Adam Dennett, the Secretary General of the European Chamber of Commerce in China. Sitting in the middle, Mr. Wang Yiwei, the Jean Monnet Chair Professor, also Director of the Institute of International Affairs with Renmin University of China. Last but certainly not least, Mr. Qassam Tofali, who is the President of the Arab-Chinese Cooperation and Development Association. Welcome to all of you. Now, for the year 2025, I'm sure we need to deal with a top priority, that is tariff. We have already been hearing a lot about tariff. Over the past 1 month, it's the headline of every day. So, may I have your thoughts, Professor Chang? Here in Asia, how do we see the danger of tariffs, and how are we going to deal with it?
Tariff has become the subject of the conversation here in ASEAN, in Malaysia, in Singapore. We are made fully aware of the impending full-blown tariff war that is coming with Trump 2.0. What we have to do right now is really girding ourselves and preparing ourselves for it. We just basically have to anticipate and try to, gird and try to, as some would say, Trump-proof our supply chain, our industry. But nonetheless, we still hold this optimistic kind of prospect.
Well, I'll have to resonate with what Professor Chang just said. Trump is obviously not only more transactional, but also less multilateral in many ways than the previous administration has been. So I think I will speak with relative optimism that because maybe the incoming Trump administration is more also in many ways pragmatic, practical, also it could be for many regions, maybe more likely to understand exactly how to work with them and at the same time to protect and to strengthen regional partnerships, economic partnerships, to be able to protect ourselves, Trump-proof.
On the one hand, try to be Trump-proof. On the other hand, how regionally can we do better? Mr. Kafali, what is your thought?
Trump 1.0 policies, which continued with the Biden administration as well, proved to be counterproductive, and in fact, actually proved to be maybe to the benefit of some of the countries where they looked more inside and they looked more into solidifying their economies. And maybe 2.0 as well could be an opportunity for those countries to work more on their local economies and create more opportunities between the other regions.
Trump has a 3-point plan. Number 1, create a crisis. Number 2, solve the crisis. Number 3, take credit for the crisis. So I think already a few months ago, we heard him talking about 60% tariffs for China and 20% for the rest of the world. Already, I think he's backed down from that, and people even in his own incoming administration have played that down a bit. At the end of the day, tariffs generally don't work. We will be having to have transactional agreements with him, and hopefully we can have them sooner rather than later.
Professor Wang, how is China looking at that?
Tariff means you are on a weakness, actually. You show your weakness, not show you're strong. When you open your market, it means you are self-confident about your comparative advantage. But Trump now, show the weakness of the American power. So it's a wrong signal, I think, to the world. And secondly, the tariff is not a respect, not just the other trade partner, but also WTO, the multilateral world. So it's more unilateral, so which definitely not welcome.
How do you see the possibility that people have enough desire, wisdom, time, and energy for a collective approach, or are they just going to be ever more transactional vis-a-vis the United States, and that's it?
We saw that back in 2020, 19, the comprehensive agreement on investment between China and the EU, it fell apart. And I think, had there been a better sense that there could be in the future an American administration that would be less reliable in terms of broadening economic partnerships with the European Union. This is just an example. There would have been maybe a more rational approach towards a balanced policy of economic cooperation and growth towards China, and at the same time maintaining, a traditionally strong and important relationship with the United States. I also think that, yes, the US is the largest economy in the world, but the relative significance of the United States or the traditional Western economies is reducing with time. Now we see Of course, RCEP is a great example. We also see the SCO, BRICS, APEC. I mean, there's so much more representation of the global south. We also see the African Union becoming more dynamic. There are so many regions emerging that this uncertainty, so to speak, or this relative lack of confidence in the American administration to be open and closing off will actually encourage regions to become more resilient.
First of all, EU exports actually 3 times as much to the US as it does to China. So obviously the EU-China relationship is very important, but our relationship with the US from an export perspective is even more important. What's interesting in all of this, though, is if the US alienates some of its traditional allies, it could actually push the EU and China closer together. On a number of the CAI you were mentioning, and a number of other initiatives, the EU is going to want to continue to look for open markets, and they'll go wherever they can to find them. And so if they can't find it in the US through their usual dialogue and negotiations, people will go elsewhere.
Earlier, I have talked to exclusively the Director General of the WTO, World Trade Organization, Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, and here is what she said about her observation of the rise of protectionism and what it means for all of us. Take a look.
Unilateral approaches will lead to lose-lose. We've seen this movie before. Okay, in the 1930s, we had that. So let's try not to do that. And developing, the poor countries who are members of the WTO will not have the power to compete or to defend themselves against measures. So we're really worried that they would be the losers in this if we continue in this way.
What does the use bilaterally of tariffs mean for the international trade system, which has been established for more than 3 decades, WTO, for example, and GATT goes even earlier than 30 years. That has been instrumental in making sure the wealth that we're having today in our world. Everybody is a product of globalization now, but what does that mean? Professor Chang.
Yeah, you made a good point. Trump has used tariffs not just for economic reasons, he's used tariffs for fentanyl crisis and the immigration crisis. He's using it as a weapon, a geopolitical weapon, to bend some of his even allies to the American will. And this is quite interesting. I mean, in general, economists has argued that tariffs in general is bad for global economy. Targeted tariffs may serve certain purposes that could protect certain industries that each country would justifiably protect. But this kind of blanket tariffs is very damaging for the global economy as a whole. And not only that, he is using tariffs for geopolitical reasons that is even more counterproductive. So I'm not too sure how far he's going to go with using these tariffs to want to bend the world to the American will. But if he goes down that way, the road really match his rhetoric with actions, it could be very damaging for the global economy.
China with multilateralism.
A strong supporter of the multilateral trading system.
A great example.
I love China and the people.
A critical role has an enormous opportunity.
A remarkable development.
Have renewed deep commitment of China with multilateralism and with the UN, which represents 2 traditional ways to assert itself in the world.
Is a strong supporter of the multilateral trading system within the WTO and has continued to assure us of its support.
China will have a critical role in shaping this new world order, based on multilateralism, based on cooperation.
Respect and trust. Now we have it in China, and I think the same spirit should apply to all. And I think for ASEAN, it's an excellent sort of arrangement.
Whatever President Xi says is really encapsulated. If you analyze what we have in the Putrajaya vision, exactly those things.
I believe the proposal of the Belt and Road Initiative is in line with China's interests, the interests of the region, and the common interests of the international community.
China is a great example of a country that is now very self-sufficient and helping other countries.
And then there's still the remarkable development of Chinese technologies and Chinese productions. Look at the leadership that's taking place in wind and electric vehicles.
China is the biggest car market in the world, and it's the biggest market for Mercedes.
China is our principal strategic partnership, Port of Shanghai.
Yes.
This is an important logistical.
China has an enormous opportunity to decarbonize its economy, but also to become a leader in a global context in that green economy or in the green technology sectors that will drive development tomorrow.
Well, we are talking about the dangers of tariff. Others are also looking at the different roles different economies are going to play. For example, the middle players. Those economies like those in the Middle East, those are big economies from the ASEAN. We also see countries in different parts of the world, for example, Japan, South Korea, and the list goes on, Singapore as well. What does that mean for middle players, as people have been talking about? The players besides China and the United States, as the two were being assumed to have some kinds of rivalry for the next few years.
The middle countries are in a difficult situation because if you're a bigger economic power, that weight that you can put behind that sort of approach to policies, you really can push them in an unfair direction. So regional agreements is one option. And also, there's other partners, there's substitutes, there's other industries that they can focus on. So I think you need to look at this in a wider context and act accordingly.
How do you see the roles, Professor Wang, of others? For example, as we say, the middle players, the third-party countries and economies?
Tariff and the world of uncertainty make the other countries more independent from United States, from other partners. So that's, I think, maybe it's the long-term trend. And mid-powers, mid-economy, of course, there will be seek more localization or global regionalization to deal with the so-called deglobalization trend. For instance, now even Turkey applied to join BRICS, or some more countries also join maybe SCO also. So that's a new phenomenon.
How do you see these economies trying to take these opportunities? While they are taking these opportunities, what might be the priorities for them? And without a more concerted efforts signing on to common principles or agreed basis, will they be able to do it? Mr. Kafali, very briefly, before I go to the others.
Yes. Well, as you mentioned, in the Middle East, I take it is in point here. We definitely have a chance, to try to balance the relationship between the two extreme powers. We have also, a point there to compare between who is pushing us, to go more deep into developing our economies and our societies, and who's probably doing more hurdles against us. And this is something maybe we will see more of that maybe in the near future.
Professor Chang?
We are in a globalization 2.0. Let me explain. Globalization 1.0 was largely led by US, the Americans. For over the last 5 decades, they were the driver of globalization. But for some reason, they have found globalization has not benefited them as much as they would like to. And now we are into globalization 2.0. America may choose not to be part of it, but the rest of the world is. China, Global South, and part of Europe will continue to want to open up trade, and we will continue to do globalization 2.0. Malaysia and Singapore in particular recognize the importance of open trade. We have benefited trading with both sides, East and West, China and America. It has benefited our economy, and we will continue to maintain that. And certainly in Southeast Asia, we continue to believe in the globalization sort of vision, and we see that as a future. At a time where the fate of humanity is increasingly intertwined, the environmental crisis, the pandemic, the threat of AI, there is more need for us to come together as a global village to deal with these common challenges that we face. To deglobalize right now is just going against the grain of time, the challenges that we face. Right. So I believe globalization is here to stay.
I like very much what you say, but I don't know if we can take it for granted. If you look at people flows in the last few years, we've seen a decrease in international people coming to China, for example. If you look at the supply chain situation, we're in a situation where China is much, much less reliant on the rest of the world than it was before, and many countries are building up their own supply chains. What do you do if Trump does this, or if countries are rolling out tariffs and everybody's responding on that? There's one other thing I think that hasn't been said yet and is really, really important is, we don't have to rely on our trading partners for everything to improve our lives and our economy. We should also look within, right? There's a lot of things that the Chinese government, the Europeans, the Americans, all our countries can do to improve our own economic efficiency and productivity and regulation and market systems as well. So I would also stress that in this context of discussing all of these issues, that we also think about what we can do domestically as well.
Looking inward, is that the way? Ms. Khan?
Countries are in the end looking for solutions, better ways to survive, better ways to address the commitments they have made to their local populations. What that really means is that, for instance, in a situation like where we are right now, where it's still a few years from a global pandemic, when there were many limitations, and I think there should be more logical dialogue. So, for example, when Professor Chang mentioned that Malaysia felt the need to protect a certain industry, this is a conversation that the region can have. Okay, what is the logic, and maybe we can be more supportive in some ways, and we can relate to each other when there's some relative, very niche protectionist tendencies. But broadly, there is a consensus that we need to continue to expand our cooperation. And even if a few numbers, like number of tourists coming to China, for example, might have dropped, but the basic access to opportunities in the world at large, awareness of opportunities is only growing. And I think that's an irreversible trend for now.
Right. All of you could be arguably suggesting, I'm coming from the global south. China makes sure that itself is a natural player in the global south, one of the leading economies of the global south. The Middle East consider themselves members of the global south. South Asia, where Ms. Khan is coming from, certainly many of them are the global south. And ASEAN countries, Malaysia, very proudly becoming a member of the global south. So this is a very vibrant concept, and certainly we see more meanings are being put into this concept. And yet, at this point, when we are talking about tariffs and deglobalization, throwing the bathwater together with the, throw the baby out together with the bathwater, do you see this concept is going to be enough to counter what we are likely to experience? Professor Wang.
Global South means global majority. So China definitely on the majority side.
40% of the global GDP.
But 80% people, more than. So people first. We should own the most of people, right? Secondly, now the identity politics rising China. Of course, we said our permanent member of the United Nations Security Council. This veto power is not just for China. It's for Global South, because China is only Global South P5 member. So it's a political identity. It's not just per capita GDP or say, that's very important. And G7 now, led by the United States actually, right? Global South is no single leadership. India claimed they are Global South leader. Yes, welcome. And China also one of them. I would suggest maybe African Union be the leader also, because African Union, all the Global South countries, right? And the African Union should...
and Latin America.
Latin America.
No, but Latin Americans, they still have some Global North, like Chile economy, people say. But the Global South, all African continent, they're Global South members, so it's more representative in Africa. China, we say, we're always on the side of the Global South. We support the Global South because Global South, their representative in the global governance is unbalanced, because they have more people, now even more GDP, but they're traditionally the cause of discourse, the power of discourse, are representatives.
Ms. Khan, you mentioned repeatedly about Global South, but is it going to be a rising factor that could help many of us to, shall we say, weather the storm, if we know what exactly is in the storm?
The Global South perspective is really about inclusivity. It is really about promoting diversity. It's really about pragmatism and promoting a way of globalization that caters to the diverse needs of a dynamic part of the world. So I'll say that, yes, we're 40% of the global economy, but today the Global South is seen as an opportunity. And actually, lastly, and I'm being long, but I think for the Global North, or whether we want to call it the previous center, they used to call us the third world. So let's just say this was the supposed center. Their relevance in the next 10 to 20 to 30 years will depend on the degree to which they're able to engage constructively and relate with the growing dynamism and needs of this Global South. So I think it's not just enough, it is the reality of the world we live in.
Will Global South collectively weather the storm? Professor Chang?
Yes, I believe so. Because the last decade or two, we have seen, largely due to thanks to China, China's miraculous economic development, the China story that is so unique to China, through the BRI and the Global Development Initiative. This has become a reality for the rest of us in Global South as well. And there is this always thinking that if China could do it, maybe we could do it as well. So Global South, over the last 2 decades, have sort of emerged from the shadow of the Global North. And we emerged largely through our own internal momentum and dynamism, which is primarily driven by China. And I believe that even if the Global North do not want to be part of the globalization 2.0, Global South with China has our own inertia, internal momentum to carry us forward.
Thank you so much for your input, your insights, and also the sense of optimism. I think that's what we need, really, as we are heading for 2025. Really appreciate it. Thank you. And that's all we have for the 2 episodes of our special program, The World Ahead 2025. If you'd like to know more, search World Insight, check out our YouTube channel, follow us on X and Facebook. I'm Tian Wei on behalf of the team. Thanks for being with us. Bye for now.